What if everything you've been taught about love is backwards? Picture this. You're watching your most confident friend, the one who never seems to try effortlessly captivate everyone around. They're not the loudest in the room. They're not chasing attention, but somehow people are drawn to them, intrigued, pulled in almost magnetically. Meanwhile, you're stuck, analyzing every text, second-guessing your silence, doing all the reaching out and getting half-hearted responses in return. Feels unfair, doesn't it? Here's the truth that hits hard. Most of us have been conditioned to believe that love and connection come from effort, that the more available we are, the more we show we care, the more someone will value us. But that mindset, it doesn't build attraction. It drains your energy and gives your power away. What if I told you that real desire, real respect, and real connection begin the moment you stop chasing and start embodying something ancient, something powerful? Stoic stillness. The Stoics taught that inner strength, not outward effort, is what creates lasting influence. And when it comes to relationships, that couldn't be more true. You don't need to beg to be chosen, to become the kind of presence that doesn't ask for attention. It commands it. That's what we're diving into today. How to flip the script and let people start chasing you, all by changing how you show up, not for them but for you. If this already feels like the kind of shift you've been needing, you're into conversations that blend ancient wisdom with real-world impact. There's one simple free favor I'll ask in return. Hit that subscribe button. It's the easiest way to let me know we're on the same path, building something solid, grounded, and powerful from the inside out. Let's get into it. Let's be honest, most of us have been taught that love is about effort, about showing up first, texting first, keeping the spark alive by doing more. It sounds noble, thoughtful, even. But in truth, it's exhausting, because what no one tells you is this: when you're always the one reaching out, a silent message, I need this more than you do. And that changes everything. The energy shifts, the dynamic tilts suddenly. You're not someone they feel lucky to talk to. You're just someone who's always available, and deep down, we don't chase what we already have. We chase what feels just out of reach. Now, this doesn't mean you need to start playing games or acting distant for the sake of manipulation. That's not Stoicism, that's strategy without substance. The Stoics taught something far deeper: self-restraint, the power of not reacting out of impulse but out of wisdom. Epictetus once said, no person is free who is not master of themselves. So before you send that text, just to feel noticed, pause, ask yourself, am I doing this to connect or to feel temporarily less anxious? See, attraction isn't built through constant communication. It's built through emotional contrast. When someone does hear from you for a little while, their mind starts to wonder. They wonder what you're doing, who you're with, how you're feeling. That space, that gentle absence, it plants a seed. It creates a vacuum that attention naturally rushes to fill, not because you're playing hard to get, but because you stepped out of the spotlight and let curiosity walk in. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. Sometimes texting first all the time isn't about kindness, it's about avoiding silence. Because silence forces you to sit with yourself, your uncertainty, with doubt, and that's uncomfortable. But the moment you get comfortable, with that silence. The moment you stop trying to fill every gap, that's the moment you become powerful. And here's something else. When you always initiate, you don't give the other person a chance to invest, taking away their opportunity to choose you. You're rushing the story instead of letting it unfold. Think about it. How can someone chase you if you never stop running toward them? Plato once said the first and best victory is to conquer self. That includes the urge to control how connection unfolds. Try this. If you're always the one to text first, just stop. Not forever. Not in a cold, passive-aggressive way. Just take 3 days, 3 days of stillness, 3 days of no initiations. Not to punish anyone, but to observe, to see who notices your silence, who fills in the space, who steps up when you stop. Because here's the deeper truth. When you stop rushing to be seen, you start to see who's actually looking. When you stop speaking just to feel heard, you learn who listens when you're quiet. And when you stop chasing, you give others the space to decide if they truly want to follow. This kind of restraint isn't passive, it's strength. Socrates once taught that to know thyself is the beginning of wisdom, and every time you resist the pull to overgive, to over-explain, to over-text, you get a little closer to that wisdom. You become the kind of person whose attention isn't a given but a gift. People don't realize how much they give away in the first few conversations. We're so eager to connect, to be liked, to prove we're interesting, that we end up laying everything out: hobbies, opinions, past relationships, every thought, every feeling explained in full detail. But here's the thing: when you give someone the whole story up front, they stop reading. There's no suspense, no tension, no room left to wonder. You become familiar too quickly, and familiarity, as the Stoics would say, breeds indifference. The ancient Stoics believed in measured expression, not because they feared vulnerability, but because they knew the value of depth. As Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." That's not just good advice for wisdom, it's gold for attraction. When you say less, you give others space to lean in, to wonder, to fill in the blanks with their own imagination. And that's what draws people closer, not the facts you spill, but the feelings they're left holding. Psychology backs this up too. Carl Jung once wrote, "The meeting of 2 personalities is like the contact of 2 chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed, and transformation doesn't happen when everything is predictable. It happens when something unnamed stirs emotion, a little mystery, the kind that makes someone feel there's more to discover, is what ignites that transformation." Let's break this down practically. The next time someone asks you what you do for fun, don't give them a resume. Don't list 5 activities in neat points. Say something like, depends on the mood. Sometimes I disappear for days. Sometimes I throw the best dinner party you've ever seen. That's not being vague. That's giving them something to chew on, a small spark of curiosity. Now they're not just hearing you, they're thinking about you. Aristotle said, "The aim of art is to represent not the outward appearance of things, but their inward significance in conversation." This means you don't need to showcase every part of yourself at once. You only need to reveal what stirs curiosity. Share a piece of your world, not the whole thing. Leave space for your presence to unfold over time, not all in one breath. This doesn't mean you should hide who you are. Not at all. Vulnerability is beautiful, when it's earned, when it's layered, when it builds slowly, like a story told in chapters. What you're doing is creating emotional pacing, giving someone time to catch up, time to want more, time to invest. Socrates once said the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. That same mindset can be felt in the people we chase. There's always something just out of reach, some new layer, some untold detail. When someone feels like they already know everything about you, their mind moves on. But when there's more to explore, they keep coming back. You don't have to pretend to be mysterious, you just have to stop over-explaining. Let the silence sit. Let the question hang a little longer before you answer. Let someone get curious, and if they ask again, that's a sign it's working, because people don't chase what's obvious. They chase what sparks wonder. So slow down. Speak simply but with weight. Don't fill in every gap. Let them want to know. That's not game playing. That's wisdom, that's restraint, that's power, and the ones who master it, they chase them, the ones being chased. There's a strange lie that's crept into how we think about connection. The idea that the more available you are, the more someone will appreciate you, that if you show up constantly, drop everything when they call, reply instantly, no matter what you're doing, they'll see that as loyalty, as love, as effort. But the truth, that kind of constant presence doesn't increase your value. It quietly erodes it. When people can reach you at any time, for any, with zero resistance, they start to forget that your time has weight, that your attention means something. It's the law of supply and demand. If something is always there, it starts to feel ordinary, familiar, and as every Stoic knew, familiarity dulls appreciation. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "We love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinions than our own." Think about that. If you always prioritize someone else's moment over your own, you're not being generous, you're abandoning yourself. And here's where it gets deeper. Western psychology backs this up too. Carl Jung said the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But how can you do that? How can you even hear your own thoughts if you're always on standby, waiting to respond, available to anyone at any time? That's not self-awareness, that's overexposure. Don't confuse being kind with being on call. Boundaries aren't walls, they're standards. When you stop immediately reacting to every message or request, you're not being rude, you're showing that your energy is sacred, that your focus is earned, not assumed. And people feel that difference. They may not say it, but they respect it, because deep down, we all value what feels rare. Aristotle believed in living life with virtue and balance. He said, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. That kind of self-knowledge means knowing how you want to spend your time and with whom. It means having a life that doesn't pause just because someone else suddenly remembered you exist. You want people to value your time. Start by valuing it yourself. Let's get practical. This week, try saying no once, not to be difficult, but to protect your peace. Let a message sit for an hour instead of replying in 60 seconds. If someone wants to talk and you're mid-focus, finish what you're doing first. It doesn't make you cold, it makes you clear. Your presence is not a product on a shelf. It's not always in stock. And the moment people realize that, they start to treat it with care. Plato once taught that the good life is one of order, purpose, and harmony, not chaos, not urgency, not being yanked in 10 directions by everyone else's needs. When you move from that grounded place, when you carry yourself like someone with a purpose, people feel it. And that feeling, that's what pulls them in, not your availability, your alignment. So set the tone, slow the pace. Show up when you decide to, not when you're summoned, because availability doesn't equal value but self-respect that always does. It's a strange feeling, isn't it? When you really care about someone, every part of you wants to closer, you want to stay in touch, stay connected, stay relevant in their mind, so you send the texts. You check their stories, you respond before they even finish typing, you show up again and again, not because you're needy, but because you're afraid of being forgotten. But here's the paradox. The more you try to stay close, the more the connection starts to fade. Why? Because too much presence doesn't build connection, it smothers it. When there's no space, there's no contrast. And without contrast, there's no curiosity, no spark. Even the warmest fire goes out when there's no oxygen, and that's what constant contact does. It takes all the air out of the room. The Stoics understood this on a soul-deep level. They practiced emotional detachment, not to be cold, but to stay in control. Epictetus once said, "He who is not satisfied with a little is satisfied with nothing." That means if you can't be okay with a little distance, a little silence, then no amount of closeness will ever truly comfort you. True connection isn't about always being there. It's about being felt, even when you're not. Carl Jung spoke about the necessity of separation in growth. He said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important." And often the most important thing you can communicate isn't through words, it's through your absence. When you step back, you give others the chance to feel what you mean to them, not by telling them, but by creating the space for them to realize it themselves. Plato once taught that everything meaningful must pass through stages: formation, contrast, transformation. It's the same with people. Constant updates, constant checking in, doesn't give anything time to form. It cuts off the natural rhythm. Someone never gets the chance to wonder where you are, what you're thinking, or why you're suddenly quiet. They never get the chance to miss you. And this isn't about playing games. It's about restoring balance. When one person is always showing up while the other drifts in and out, it creates emotional imbalance. And imbalance doesn't feel romantic, it feels heavy. The goal isn't to punish anyone with silence. It's to let desire breathe again, to let longing come up for air. Socrates believed that awareness of self is the beginning of all wisdom, and part of self-awareness is noticing you're reaching out because you're anxious, not because you're grounded. When you text just to feel a response, when you're online just to feel close, that's not presence, that's pursuit. And if you're always in pursuit, there's no room for them to take a step forward. So here's the shift: resist the urge, not forever, not with hostility, just enough to let silence do what words cannot. Let your absence speak, let the tension build, let the stillness create value. Because the people who are meant to be close, they'll feel the gap, they'll notice your silence, they'll want to fill that space. And that's when the energy flips, that's when attraction returns, not through force but through air, through space, through self-respect. Because in the end, you don't need to be constantly present to be unforgettable. You just need to stop chasing and start allowing. Let them feel the silence. Let it say what your words never could. There's something subtle but powerful about the unexpected. Think about it: the most unforgettable conversations, the most magnetic people, the ones who linger in your mind long after they leave, They all share one thing: unpredictability, not in a wild, unstable way, but in a human, dynamic, emotionally alive way. They don't move in straight lines, they don't repeat the same rhythm over and over, and that's exactly why we keep thinking about them. They catch us off guard, and we like it. You see, the human brain is wired to seek patterns, but it's also wired to get bored by them. Predictability makes us feel safe, sure, but after a while safety becomes monotony. If someone always texts at the same time, always use the same tone, always reacts the same way, you stop wondering what they'll do next, and once the wondering stops, so does the excitement, and when the excitement dies, does the chase. The Stoics knew this well while they preached emotional stability. They didn't confuse it with emotional flatness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The universe's change, our life is what our thoughts make it change." That's the key word to live well, to connect deeply, to keep things alive. We need a little movement, a little flux, a little of the unnamed. Not chaos, but color. When you bring that into your relationships, into how you communicate and show up, something shifts. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." But here's the twist: when you fully accept yourself, you no longer feel the need to be predictable just to make others comfortable. You allow yourself to show all your sides, your serious side, your funny side, your quiet moments, your bold opinions. You stop shrinking into patterns and you start expanding into your full human range. And let's talk about energy for a second. Energy is contagious when you're fully alive. When you bring variation into your presence, people feel it. They don't always know why they're drawn to you, but they are, because you bring something that wakes them up. And most people, they're walking around half asleep, stuck in routines and shallow interactions. When you interrupt that with just a little surprise, it lights a spark. Aristotle said, "Pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work." That applies to relationships too. When you bring joy, playfulness, and a touch of the unexpected to how you interact, everything feels fresher. Even the smallest moments, a message with a different tone, a playful reply when they expected something serious, a pause when they expected a reaction. These tiny shifts create intrigue. So what can you do right now? Break your rhythm if you always reply instantly. Wait an hour if you always say good night. Try switching it up with something funny or offbeat. Be poetic one day, blunt the next. Let them experience the full range of you, not the edited, predictable version, because real attraction isn't about being perfect, it's about being real and unpredictable. Plato believed that love is born from a desire to find something beyond ourselves, new, something meaningful. If you always act in ways that others can easily map out, you take away the joy of discovery, and discovery is where real emotion lives. So here's the challenge: do one thing this week that surprises someone. Doesn't have to be dramatic. Maybe you call when you usually text. Maybe you bring up a topic you've never shared. Maybe you change your tone just a little. Let them feel the spark of unpredictability, not because you're trying to impress, but because you're not afraid to be alive. You don't have to become someone else, you just have to let more of you come through. Stoicism isn't about being stiff or robotic. It's about moving with intention, and that includes knowing when to shift the rhythm. When you bring that level of awareness into your presence, people won't know exactly what to expect. And that's exactly why they'll keep coming back. There's a quiet power in saying less, especially when it comes to compliments. We've all been taught that giving praise is a good thing, and it can be, but only when it's real, rare, and rooted in presence. See, the problem isn't that people like compliments. The problem is that when they're handed out like candy early off and without thought, they stop meaning anything. What started as warmth starts to feel like approval seeking. And that's when the energy shifts. People pick up on it, not always consciously, but they feel it when someone showers them with compliments before they've even earned your attention. Signals a lack of self-containment, like you're trying to win them over with words. And here's the truth: what's earned is respected. What's given too easily is dismissed. Compliments aren't inherently bad, but used the wrong way, they lose their impact and lower your perceived value. The Stoics, restraint not just in action but in expression. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good person should be. Be one in the same way. Don't talk endlessly about how amazing someone is just to be liked. Be someone who pays attention, who notices detail, who speaks with purpose. And when you do speak, they'll listen, not because your words are louder, but because they're rarer." Carl Jung had a similar view on authenticity. He said, "You are what you do, not what you say. You'll do the same." Goes for connection. It's not about how many nice things you say. It's about how grounded you when you say them. Are your compliments automatic, or are they specific, earned, deserved? A compliment that lands with emotional weight will echo much louder than a dozen casual ones tossed in just to keep attention. And here's where it gets interesting. In a world where most people are quick to flatter, where validation is cheap and overused, your silence becomes a signal. When someone's used to getting compliments from everyone and you don't immediately jump in, it creates tension, a little mystery. They start to wonder, why hasn't this person said anything? That pause, that space, that absence, it's magnetic. It creates an emotional contrast that people remember. Socrates believed that true wisdom begins with knowing how little you know, and that applies here too. When you observe more and speak less, when you don't rush to praise, you're showing wisdom. You're showing that you're not easily impressed, and that your validation actually means something. This doesn't mean you should withhold affection or be emotionally closed off. Not at all, but it does mean becoming intentional with your praise. Wait until it lands. Wait until you feel it, and then say it simply, clearly, without exaggeration. One well-placed, honest compliment, not about looks but about presence, thought, character, can change everything. Plato once said, "Wise men speak because they have something to say, fools because they have to say something." Compliments are no different. The ones that come from stillness, from attention, from truth, those are the ones people replay in their heads for days. So here's your challenge. Next time you're about to send that "you're so cute" message, pause, observe instead. Let them feel your attention before they hear it. Then when the right moment comes, say something that lands with weight. That's the kind of compliment they'll chase, not because it flatters their ego, but because it felt real, and real is rare. Some of the most powerful moments in life happen in silence. Not in noise, not in explanations, but in that still space between words, where something deeper settles in. It's in those moments that people really feel something, not because you said more, but because you allowed the tension to breathe. But here's the catch: most people can't sit with silence. It makes them anxious. It feels like a void that must be filled. So they rush, they ramble, they reply too fast. Not because they're confident, but because they're trying to avoid discomfort. But discomfort isn't always the enemy. In fact, it's often the doorway to something real. The Stoics knew this. They practiced restraint not only in emotion but in expression. Epictetus once said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters, that includes how you react to silence when someone goes quiet or when a conversation lulls. Do you panic or do you lean back, breathe, and let the moment unfold? Carl Jung understood this too. He wrote, "Solitude is for me a fount of healing, which makes my life worth living. Silence, both inward and outward, allows space, clarity, and clarity allows for deeper connection. When you resist the urge to speak, just to keep a moment alive, you send a powerful message. I am at ease with myself, and that more than any clever text or perfect reply creates magnetism." Socrates, the father of questioning, believed that wisdom begins in wonder, but wonder doesn't grow in a monologue. It grows in pause, in the gaps, in letting a question hang unanswered for just a bit longer than usual. That delay, that breath, it invites curiosity, it stirs reflection, and reflection is where real connection begins. Let's talk rhythm in music. It's not just the that move us, it's the silence between them. That's what gives the melody shape. Conversation is no different. If you're always speaking, always explaining, always jumping to respond, there's no space for the other person to feel your words. But when you pause, even for a beat, some shifts. They lean in, they wonder, and that leaning in, that's attraction being born. Aristotle once said, "The more you know, the more you realize you don't know." Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is hold back. Say less. Trust that your presence, your silence, your calm, they speak volumes. Don't have to explain everything. You don't need to follow every message with a follow-up. Let the conversation breathe. Let your energy sit quietly in the room. If someone's curious about you, they'll come forward. If they're not, no amount of filler will change that. Here's the truth. Silence, emptiness, it's invitation, it's mystery. It's the space where emotional gravity is created, and in a world that's always rushing to respond, the person who can pause, who can wait instantly, stands out. That stillness becomes a signal, a magnetic pulse that draws people in. Not because you're trying, because you're centered. So, next time you're in a conversation, resist the reflex. Let there be silence. Let a message sit before you reply. Let a question linger before you answer. Let your presence speak without noise. Because when you master the pause, you don't just speak, you resonate. There's something unspoken that people pick up on instantly. Energy, not the surface level kind, but the deeper, quieter energy that says, "I know my worth." And the most magnetic kind of energy. It's the one that doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't perform. It simply chooses with calm, with confidence, with clarity, not from a place of arrogance, but from self-respect. You don't have to walk around announcing that you have options. The people who really do, they don't talk about it, they don't flash it, they just move differently. Their words have weight because they're not trying to convince. Their presence holds value because they're not desperate to be seen. And that alone, that quiet confidence, it makes people want to be chosen by them. This is what the Stoics meant when they spoke of self-sufficiency. Seneca said, "He who is content is rich." If you already feel whole, then no one can control you with attention or approval. You're not out here begging for love. You're deciding who deserves access to your peace. That's power, real, lasting power, and people feel that even if they don't consciously realize it. They sense when someone isn't trying to prove anything. Carl Jung once observed, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely," and it's true. Because once you fully accept yourself, you stop needing someone else's validation to feel secure. You stop shrinking. You stop editing your words, your personality, your needs just to get someone to like you. You don't need them to choose you, because you've already chosen yourself. Now think about this practically. Ever notice how differently you talk to someone when you're not emotionally attached to the outcome? When you're not waiting on their approval, you're more relaxed, more playful. You don't overthink every word. That version of you, the one that's grounded and natural, that's the version people chase because it feels real, it feels alive. But when you act like this, one person is your only shot. Like this is your only chance at connection, love, or attention. It starts to show. You try too hard, you overcompliment, you filter your opinions, you laugh at things that aren't funny, and slowly, without even realizing it, you move out of alignment with yourself. And the person on the other end, they can sense it, not through words, but through tension, through energy. The vibe shifts, and not in your favor. Plato once said the measure of a man is what he does with power and emotion. Power, the power to walk away, to choose, to stand still, is one of the most valuable things you can cultivate when you talk like someone with options, not because you're bluffing, but because you genuinely feel that freedom. It changes your tone, it changes your posture, it changes the way people listen when you speak. Here's a simple self-check. Next time you're around someone you're interested in, ask yourself, am I being real or am I performing? If your tone is laced with nervous energy, if your words are built to impress instead of express, pause, breathe, recenter. You don't need to convince anyone of your value. The right ones will recognize it without the pitch. Socrates taught that to find yourself, think for yourself. So stop bending to fit into someone else's story. Create your own, make decisions that come from your values, not your fear of being alone. Because when your presence comes from peace, not pressure, people feel safer around you. They feel intrigued, they feel drawn in, and in that space, you don't need to chase anyone. They come to you, not because you said you had options, but because you carried yourself like someone who already knew it. There's a moment, quiet, often unnoticed, when you shift from confidence to chasing. It's subtle, it doesn't come with a loud alarm. It shows up in little things: saying yes when you mean no, laughing at a joke that didn't land, waiting hours for a text that never came, or giving more than you're receiving, and calling it loyalty. And if you're not careful, it becomes a pattern. You start showing up like the audience in someone else's life, clapping for their presence instead of standing like the main character in your own. Let's be clear, you are not the side note in someone else's story. You're not here to beg for crumbs of attention or prove your worth to people who don't recognize it. And yet so many of us do exactly that. We pedestal others. We treat their affection like a trophy. We tie our self-esteem to their reactions. And slowly, without meaning to, we become performers in our own lives, hope to be liked rather than simply being ourselves. This is exactly what the Stoics warned us about. Marcus Aurelius said, the tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say or think or do, only what you do. That's real confidence. It's quiet, it doesn't need applause, it doesn't place others above, it simply moves through the world with a strong spine and a calm heart. Aristotle spoke of virtue as the balance between extremes. Not too much, not too little. In relationships, that balance is everything. Give, yes, be kind, absolutely, but if you're constantly the one giving while the other simply receives, that's not balance. That's imbalance disguised as love, and people don't respect what's handed to them too easily. They respect what feels earned, not because it's manipulative, but because effort creates meaning. So here's the shift: you are the prize, not because you're perfect, not because you have more followers or better looks or clever words, but because you know your value and you're not afraid to walk alone if it's not matched. That energy, the calm assurance that you don't need to be chosen to feel whole. It's magnetic. People chase that, they lean toward that because deep down everyone is looking for someone who doesn't need them but still chooses them. And that kind of choice, that's rare. Socrates once said, know thyself. And part of knowing yourself is asking hard questions like, am I overgiving because I want to or because I'm afraid to lose them? Am I showing up grounded or am I hoping they'll give me a reason to feel worthy today? These questions aren't easy, but they're necessary. They cut through illusion and bring you back to your center. Here's a practical step every time you feel that impulse to overextend, over-explain, over-text. Pause, just pause, ask yourself, am I acting like the prize right? Now, if the answer is no, that's your signal. Reclaim your energy. Step back into your worth, not with arrogance, but with quiet authority. Because the truth is, when you start showing up like someone who values their peace, their time, their presence, people notice. You don't have to say a word. The energy speaks for itself. And the ones who are meant to walk with you, they'll recognize it. They'll match it. So stop clapping for people who wouldn't clap for you. You are not the audience. You're the whole show. And it's time to start acting like it. There's a moment, a shift in tone, a delayed reply, changed rhythm, and you feel it in your gut before your mind has words for it. Something's off. The warmth starts to cool. The presence you once felt starts to fade. An instinct kicks in, that familiar urge to reach, to fix, to prove that you're worth staying for. You want to explain, to clarify the current and hold tighter. But what if instead of clinging you chose to let go first? Not out of spite, not to play games, but from a place of deep self-awareness, from stillness, from the kind of clarity that only comes when you realize that your worth isn't something that needs defending, explaining. It's simply something you own quietly, fully, without compromise. The Stoics were masters of this kind of emotional control. Epictetus once said, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. You can't control how someone feels. You can't force connection, but what you can control is your response, your energy, and walking away with your peace intact. That's the highest form of self-respect. Carl Jung spoke to the same idea when he said, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. You are not the unanswered messages. You are not the silence on the other end. You are not the version of yourself that keeps shrinking to stay liked. You are your boundaries, your choices, your willingness to leave the room when your presence is no longer seen for what it is. Plato taught that love is a pursuit of wholeness, recognition of something noble and complete in another. But if the dynamic starts to feel like a one-way street, that's not love, that's imbalance, and staying too long in imbalance teaches your nervous system to settle for survival over connection. It teaches your spirit to tolerate crumbs. You tolerate, you train yourself to expect. Leaving first isn't dramatic. It's not loud. It doesn't have to come with announcements or burning bridges. It's subtle. It's felt more than it's seen. You simply pull your energy back. You stop performing. You stop chasing conversations. You stop waiting to be chosen and choose yourself. Instead, Socrates said, unexamined life is not worth living, and that includes the emotional patterns we repeat. Are you staying in situations that chip away at your dignity? Are you shrinking to be digestible? Are you over explaining your worth to people who've already made up their minds. These are hard questions, but they lead to freedom. Here's the thing. When you leave first from a place of inner calm and not wounded pride, something powerful happens. You're not running, you're not avoiding, you're simply acknowledging that what once felt aligned no longer is. Rather than distort yourself to fit what's changing, you honor the shift you walk, and that walk, that quiet exit with your head held high. It echoes because most people expect you to cling, to chase, to beg when you don't. You choose peace over panic. They notice that silence carries a weight. Explanation ever. Could Aristotle believe that the highest form of happiness comes from living a life of virtue and self-realization? That means choosing the hard road when it aligns with your truth. That means saying, this isn't for me, even when it hurts. Because peace isn't always found in fixing. Sometimes it's found in walking away. So if the vibe is off, trust it. Don't write another paragraph trying to salvage what someone else stopped investing in. Don't send another message hoping to revive what's already fading. Just pull your energy back softly, firmly, completely. Because the person walks away with grace doesn't just protect their dignity, they become unforgettable. And sometimes that silence, that stillness, it says everything that words never could. Let's be real. There's something unmistakable about someone who doesn't need the room to like them in order to feel whole. They're not performing, they're not trying, they're simply anchored in who they are, and somehow, without saying a word, people lean in. That's the kind of energy you can't fake, the kind that comes from doing the work on the inside. It's calm, centered, and confident. Not in a loud look at me way, but in a way that says, I'm already complete with or without your approval. This energy doesn't beg, it doesn't chase, and it definitely doesn't shrink to fit someone else's comfort. It stands tall, it makes eye contact, it speaks only when it has something real to say. You've probably seen it, maybe you felt it, that rare sense of self-possession that doesn't need to be loud because it's already solid. The truth is, most people are chasing love, not because they're full, but because they feel something missing. They're chasing validation, attention, a sense of worth. Not because they're broken, but because no one ever taught them how to be whole on their own. And so they run from person to person, moment to moment, hoping someone will finally give them what they haven't given themselves. But here's the paradox. The more you crave being wanted, the less magnetic you become. The more grounded you are in yourself, the more people naturally want to be around you. That's the power of what the Stoics called ataraxia, a state of deep, unshakable inner peace, not coldness, not emotional detachment, but a calm soul that stays steady, no matter who walks in or out of the room. Marcus Aurelius said it best, who lives in harmony with himself, lives in harmony with the universe. When your inner world is aligned, your outer world begins to reflect that. You stop chasing people to feel enough. You stop trying to fit into spaces that don't honor you. You stop proving, and instead you begin choosing. Carl Jung once said the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, and he was right, because to accept yourself means facing your shadows, sitting with your silence, owning your past, without letting it define your present. But once you do that, something shifts. You no longer search for someone to fill your cracks. You become solid, and anyone who enters your life is a bonus, not a bandage. Plato believed that true balance comes when we rise above the loud cravings of the ego and tune into something deeper, when we stop trying to be chosen and start asking ourselves, what am I choosing? We gain clarity, and that clarity, it changes the way you walk, the way you speak, and the way you allow others to access you. Imagine your life as a home. If it's empty and echoing, anyone can walk in and feel important. But if it's already full with joy, peace, purpose, and solitude, then whoever walks in must bring value. They don't come to fix you, they come to add to you, and that's how healthy love works. It's not two halves trying to make a whole, it's two whole people building something bigger together. Socrates once said, "The greatest way to live with honor is to be what we pretend to be," and in this world of curated personas and social approval, the ones who are truly grounded, truly whole, are the ones who quietly rise above the noise. They don't announce their value, they embody it, and that embodiment speaks louder than anything else. So here's the quiet truth. No one teaches you when you become the person who doesn't need anyone to feel worthy. People feel that you become rare. You become the one they remember, the one who's not afraid to be alone, the one who walks in peace, speaks with depth, and gives without losing themselves in the process. So build your life like it's already enough. Fill your days with things that feed your soul. Become someone who adds value to themselves first, because once you do that, you stop looking for someone to rescue you and start attracting those who simply want to run beside you. And that's when everything changes, not because you were chasing them, but because you finally stop chasing anything. True power begins the moment you stop chasing and start becoming. When you move through life grounded in your own worth, you don't just attract attention, you command respect. If this message stirred something in you, there's another video your screen right now that will take you even deeper into this journey. I encourage you to keep watching, keep reflecting, and keep growing. Thank you for being a part of Stoic Journal. Your presence here means more than you know. Until next time, stay calm, stay clear, and keep becoming someone silence can't ignore.